What's going on? We are live from Radio Row in Las Vegas. Bo Brock, Saul Bookman already up on the trip.
I am.
We'll see how long that lasts. This is, of course, brought to you by our friends over at Factor Meal Kits. Head to factormeals.com/cards50, Cardinals 50, and you're going to get yourself 50% off a great Factor Meal Kit. Get started today. Delicious meals, man. They're fantastic. Yeah. I'm a little malnourished. Thank God for Bounty. And setting us up with some wings that pretty legit.
Listen, if you give me free food, I'm going to talk about it, Max. So get off my back when you see this.
That's right. That's right. We had to scrub down these faces with those Bounty paper towels. Free plug for our friends that fed us today. But Factor's going to feed you on a nightly basis, and they're going to do it at an extremely high level. We're actually performing at a high level today as well with the All-City Network out here. DNVR Buffs about to go off. You watch DNVR Broncos, CHGO Bears, PHLY. And we're going to tap into those guys today, Saul. Zach Berman from PHLY Eagles is going to talk to us about how much the Eagles miss Mr. Jonathan Gannon. And then Adam Hoge is going to knock down all this insanity about Kliff Kingsbury going to Washington and what that could mean for Caleb Williams. Because he's not going to get beyond 1-1 in this draft.
No, without a doubt he won't. But, hey, the rumors are swirling. Let's see if there is a scenario where it would be danger for the Cardinals if Washington swapped spots with the #1 Chicago Bears and gave up a lot of draft capital, because that probably means that Fields is going to stay. But I just don't see that happening. Yeah. I mean, they could also take Drake May, I guess. But
I just don't think that Ryan Poles, and we'll talk to Hoge about this, wants to be the guy. Last year he passed on potentially C.J. Stroud. And then, obviously the Bears have to wear the burden that they passed on Mahomes way back when.
Yeah.
They've never had a legit, franchise quarterback. And then there would be the team that passed on Caleb Williams, and for a guy like Drake May or Jaden Daniels potentially, it would be tough. But, obviously.
Are you saying Sexy Rexy wasn't a franchise quarterback?
Or Jay Cutler or whatever, just piece of crap quarterback that they were able to run out there that still hasn't thrown for 4,000 yards.
Don't besmirch Nick Foles like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Bear down.
That he got a rough ricochet shot there. But we got our whole crew here. Damon Dog, the award-winning producer, and, of course, Michaela Perkins also got you going on the social. Damon, how we doing? One night in.
I'm chilling, man. Early night last night. We went to bed early. Saul was,
we
burning
left
the
him out
midnight
there.
oil.
We did.
Yeah,
we abandoned our boy.
I go hard when we get to Vegas. Okay,
this guy's a vet.
I'm sorry. You people like to pace themselves, but no, my pace is go to the top all the time.
You have one speed, and it's go go go, and it's win, stack chips, and come out of here a big fat winner. So let's get into as far as the Arizona Cardinals go, and Kliff Kingsbury making his way, Mr. Kingsbury going to Washington. And I already made the rounds today, Saul. I was walking around, and I saw some D.C. shows, and I want to kind of give my condolences to them for the hiring of Kliff Kingsbury, because, we'll say this till we're blue in the face, and you are a big proponent of it. You say it all the time, the qualifier, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
He's a good dude. He's a hard worker. But the idea that he's this innovative offensive mind and that he's going to be, the solution as far as the Commanders and what they want to try to do offensively as they kind of usher in a new era of football. It just doesn't feel like it's it for me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the combination of Kliff Kingsbury and Washington just does not seem like it's going to work. I'm surprised that he left the Raiders, to be honest with you. Maybe it's because of the draft capital that the Raiders have versus what Washington has, and maybe it was a little bit more appealing to have a quarterback from scratch that you can kind of mold into your system. But we saw that work already, and it didn't work.
Right.
And so, listen, K2, big fan of him as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he's able to figure it out because, I genuinely do, pull for the guy to some degree, but at the same time, I just don't see it based on what we saw for the last 5 years prior to this year.
Right. And like the idea that just because he worked with Caleb Williams for 1 year in Los Angeles at USC, and that's, all signs point to the Commanders getting up one spot with the Bears, which they would have to pay an unbelievable price to just go up one spot. I mean, they're talking about, future first, multiple first potentially, just to get up one spot. Like, Kliff is known for this, infamous maybe, in hitching his wagon to talented quarterbacks, and it doesn't have to be Caleb Williams in this draft. Like, there's 2 more quarterbacks that people have deemed worthy of that. And if he wants to get in there and work with Drake May, I think that's appealing to him. It's way more appealing than like a Sam Howell or what they were going to do. We saw him walking around here at Radio Row, Aiden O'Connell in Vegas potentially.
Yeah, this is where I hesitate on Kliff Kingsbury. I don't think he would succeed with Caleb Williams, and I don't think he would succeed with Jaden Daniels. I think Drake May is the perfect quarterback for Kliff Kingsbury's offense because we saw it. He never really had any designed runs. He didn't have any play action. He didn't do shit.
Right.
So it's basically drop back and pass, throw the little screen, throw the little slant, and hope for the best. And I think Drake May would fit that identity. Now, did Kliff Kingsbury improve himself over the course of the last year? Did he learn a couple wrinkles and some schematic things that can improve his play calling? Maybe, but he didn't call plays last year for USC. That was all Lincoln Riley. And I know everybody wants to give him, kind of point Caleb Williams to Kliff Kingsbury to some degree, and I get it because they were on the same team, but that's Lincoln Riley.
Mm-hmm.
That's nobody else. So I don't know. There's just a lot on the table. I don't think Caleb Williams going with Kliff Kingsbury is going to set him up for success.
I think Kliff Kingsbury somehow put himself in a position, and I'm not talking about like a J.K. Simmons from Whiplash that teaches jazz. Like he's like, I'm a jazz teacher. Go out there and scat and just play your jazz music, like because it's nearly impossible, right? I mean, he's just like, go out there and play. Like he doesn't have any sheet music that works correctly, right? So, like in this day and age, and Johnny Venerable, who's going to join us later this week here out Radio Row, like I think he makes a great point. Like you got to be running some form of the Shanahan offense these days. And Kliff is running these 3 to 4 wide receiver sets, one back, like giving your quarterback as little protection as possible, and it just does not set them up and create any infrastructure that's successful. That would create, for a young quarterback, successful. There's too much hero ball that needs to be played by guys who are just trying to acclimate themselves to the next level. Like Drake May, that would be an extreme disservice for him to go from playing in the ACC to playing in the NFC East and have to go and pretty much make a play each and every down just to maintain drives and score points.
Yeah, I mean, and the only freestyle quarterback that we know that exists right now is Caleb Williams.
Right.
Ironically enough, to that degree. So, listen, Kliff Kingsbury is the king of Mighty and Might football. Like, he loves the little receivers. He loves those little guys. He wants to run the screens. And it just isn't going to work at the NFL level. We've seen that, at least with his scheme.
Yeah.
We've seen it before, though. We've seen it succeed in other ways before, like the Patriots with Edelman and Welker.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that. But these guys that they kept drafting were not those guys. Rondale Moore is not that guy. And so I'm curious to see, with what pieces he has in Washington, how he's going to adjust to the personnel that he has rather than make the personnel adjust to his system. And I think that's where Kliff Kingsbury ultimately failed, is that he did not adjust the Cardinals system or the players to his system, or he tried to do that. He didn't adjust the system to the players and really take advantage of what they had to offer. So, we'll see what happens with Kliff. We're going to see it at some point. We're going to see it face to face. And I hope we kick the shit out of them.
And they are going to play next year. I believe it's going to be in AZ. It's the 4th place game that you're going to have between the Commanders and the Cardinals. But let me ask you this. If Kliff Kingsbury goes to D.C. and has success, does that mean that Kliff Kingsbury, took the time after he was fired from the Arizona Cardinals and the year at USC and made the proper adjustments that we were longing for him to make here in the desert? Or is it an indictment on Kyler Murray and crew and the offensive players that are left over from his regime?
It depends on how the roster construction is for Washington, and also Kliff's not having to worry about everything. He's just worrying about the offense. And so if he has success, I'm not.
Did he worry about everything? It didn't feel like
well, I mean,
it.
well, to some degree, you know what I mean. But to some degree, I think that Kliff having the sole focus on just the offense and nothing else. The distractions, having to report to the media on a daily basis, all this other stuff, all the intangible or the nuance that comes with being a head coach, taken off his plate, him to be the offensive coordinator. I think if he has success, that's not necessarily an indictment on the Cardinals. I don't think so, because you also have to look at the personnel as well. And if they have better personnel that's going to fit his scheme a little bit better, then props to them. I just don't think that what he had in Arizona was really an ideal fit for what he wanted. And I think that was kind of Keim's downfall as well. Drafting, taking flyers in the second and third round is just never going to win you football games. It's just not. You don't take flyers on guys like that. You take flyers in the fourth or fifth or sixth round, cool. But there was too many times, we've pointed to the DK Metcalfs of the world where they were available and they decided to go with the tweener from freaking Massachusetts. Like, you got to go with the big dogs sometimes that show you the athletic ability and the skill set to perform at a high level. And so we'll see what happens with Kliff over there. And like I said, I don't think it's an indictment on the Cardinals if he does succeed.
I think it would be – I would – root for it. I think if he can find success, if he learned from his previous breakup, and I don't think Kliff Kingsbury, think about this. This guy failed at Texas Tech, his alma mater. He goes 35-40 in the Big 12 and failed into an NFL job. What do you learn from that? You are immediately rewarded for really not having any success at your alma. Your alma mater said, hey, man, thanks for trying, but, we're going to move in a different direction. So he didn't learn anything, and I guarantee it probably Kliff is somebody, he's probably breaking off most of the relationships he's in with any of his whoever he slid into the DMs of on IG, right? He probably doesn't know or doesn't feel that often what people feel as far as when he didn't play up to or wasn't up to the standard necessary. And I wonder if he learned over this now calendar year, since he was given his walking papers on Black Monday, where he went wrong as far as at least on the offensive side of the football, because that was his department. And I think if you were to point to the Cardinals last year, sure, VJ and his defense struggled. They were just complete disaster overall. But the offense, it fell completely short of what the expectations were. We saw regression from the quarterback. What is he going to learn? If he can get back on track in any capacity, I'd say, I'd tip the cap and give him golf claps that he made the right adjustments, and good on him.
There was multiple things that went wrong with that era. There was no sense of urgency and there was no sense of construction in terms of stability. It was one of those things where, calling timeouts at the most random of times, coming out of a timeout, not being prepared for your next play. Those are the things that are inexcusable. Those are the things that high-level franchises just don't do. And that's the thing that when you look at the Kliff Kingsbury era, that probably frustrates you the most. It's not necessarily just the performance on the field. It was all the things that he personally could control and did not control. And so, like I said, man, I don't know what to expect from the Kliff Kingsbury era. I hope he learned from his mistakes. He's not going to have to be worrying about calling timeouts or anything like that. He just has to worry about putting the right play on the field at the right time.
I mean, a lot's going to fall on the shoulders of Dan Quinn. And it's funny, you see the new regime in Washington, it's you got Adam Peters from San Francisco, cool, fly-looking dude just like Kliff, and then you got Dan Quinn with his backwards hat, trying to fit in. It's hilarious. But, Dan Quinn, as far as how this team goes, it's going to come down to, if they're disciplined, but that still falls on the shoulder of Kliff Kingsbury. They were, at 3 out of their 4 years, they were the top penalized offense in the league. And that's going to frustrate Commanders fans to no end. What frustrates Cardinals fans sometimes is when you see a mock draft and, Marvin Harrison Jr., some wild card going up and selecting him third or second or wherever it may be. But it all starts at the top with the Bears. And our guy from CHGO Bears, Adam Hoge, is going to put some of those rumors to rest. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. If you haven't downloaded the Game Time app, today is the day, especially if you're going to make your way out to Vegas. You can save yourself $100 if you're going to get tickets to the big game. Check out what's going on in Game Time right now. They got a dual offer where it's Vegas 100 is going to save you $100 off tickets to the big game. And, of course, if you use our promo code PHNX, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Of course, Suns playing host to Giannis in the Bucks, tomorrow night? You want to get in the door? You want to watch that game? Well, you can save $20 while doing so by downloading the Game Time app today, signing up for a free It's going to get you right there, and it's going to get you opportunities on flash deals, zone deals, whatever it may be with Game Time. Download it today. Use the code Vegas100 if you're out here trying to go to the big game, or PHNX to get $20 off your first purchase with the Game Time. It's download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
There's a lot of good food here at the Super Bowl. You talked about, the bounty stuff and the wings and stuff like that. But to me, as you mentioned off the top, Factor is one of the easiest things you could possibly do to satisfy not only your hunger, but also your health. And I think that there's a thing to be said about that nowadays, considering all the trash food that is out there. And Factor is not one of those. Factor is fantastic, ready-to-eat meal kits. You can get 6 to 18 of them every week, and it works for your schedule, right? You can take it to work. You can eat it at home. They get it delivered to your house, and they are delicious. So many different varieties of food. You're not going to go wrong. And right now, all you have to do is head to factormeals.com/PHNX and use code PHNX to get 50% off of your first box and 2 wellness shots per box while subscription is active. That code is PHNX at factorsmeal.com/PHNX.
Love to get this guy on here. Saul, of course, he's been busy. Had a great show, CHGO Bears. Adam Hoge, he's going to kind of put to rest these rumors that, Kliff Kingsbury, him making his way, Mr. Kingsbury going to the Washingtons would say, Hoge, is he going to get Caleb Williams to DC? But there's one team in between him and that pipe dream, and it's the Chicago Bears. If we could get Adam up here, get some audio. I couldn't hear him there. There he is.
There we go.
All right.
Now I can hear my
Damon,
voice.
wake up. Wake up, Damon.
Everyone's trying to make trades with me today.
Yeah. What's the
I
best
don't
one
have
you've
any
heard?
power. I don't, the DMVR guys were trying to send Patrick Surtain to Chicago.
The
I'm
DMVR
like,
guys, come on now. Like they live in the constant pipe dream.
They win every offseason, though, too. I mean, they get Russ, 2 years ago. This year, last year, they get Sean Payton.
Yep.
I was talking to Tony Pauline out in Mobile. He said, look, Sean Payton is desperate to get one of these 3 guys, but it's a near impossibility because what's going on with the first 3 teams picking this draft, they're all quarterback hungry, and they all want to make a change, including the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I think that's the big – to me, that's the bigger question, more so than, does Caleb Williams not want to come to Chicago? We can get into that a little bit.
That's crazy.
I find a lot of that to be nonsense. To me, it's more the fundamental question of what do the Bears want to do going forward? Do they love Caleb Williams and want to go in that direction, or do they have concerns about Caleb Williams to the point that, okay, the safer thing to do is to just take a haul from whatever team's going to offer it and try to keep making this thing work with Justin Fields? But there's so many reasons even within that conversation, which we have every single day on CHGO, where it just seems hard to believe that that's what this GM at this point, who did not draft Justin Fields, by the way, is going to do when he can reset the rookie contract. And I think we can all watch Caleb Williams and understand how good he is too. So that's ultimately where I still think this thing heads. We're in Vegas. We talk Vegas odds. I mean, the betting favorite right now has to be that Caleb Williams is a Chicago Bear at the end of April.
What in your opinion, if Caleb Williams was not to go number 1 to the Bears, what's the best case scenario for the Bears if they don't draft Caleb Williams number 1 overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best case scenario is just that they end up getting, the same type of trade they got last year, which obviously worked out really well, where they not only added the draft capital that they did that led them to this position where they have the number 1 pick again, but they also drafted a player in DJ Moore that was,
Yeah.
instantly impactful. Was probably the best player on the entire roster this year. So that's where that's where there's a strong argument if you want to keep Justin Fields. I don't think they would draft a different quarterback. At least not in the first round. Maybe they like J.J. McCarthy in the second round or something like that. But right now they don't have a second round pick, so that would have to become in the in the trade package that they would get. I find it hard to believe they would move just back 1 spot and then still end up taking Drake May, moving on from Justin Fields. I feel like the bust factor is a little bit too high there.
So you're saying Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the guy?
Yeah, I do.
That's what I was trying to get to, folks.
Sorry, guys. I do think that's if they move out of that pick to only number 2 or number 3, my gut right now, not inside information, would be they're sticking with Fields and they're just going to draft a really good. They're going to take the draft haul they got or the trade haul, and then they're going to draft Marvin Harrison Jr.
But you find yourself in a situation, though, possibly that you would have DJ Moore, and then you have Marvin Harrison, and Fields would crap the bed again next year, and then what do? Now you're right back to where you started.
And I think that's why the logical way to break this all down leads me back to Caleb Williams being a Bear, because this trade that they pulled off last year with the Panthers could not have worked out better. And I don't even think when they made it, they thought they would end up with the number 1 pick again. What happened with the Panthers this year, no one really thought they'd be great, but I certainly didn't think they'd be as bad as they were. And even if you think that when you make that trade in March of last year, you don't know that.
Right.
You don't know when you're making that trade. You can't make that trade be like, oh, well, we're going to get Caleb Williams next year out of this. There's just, you can't do it that way. So same thing applies this year. If you're going to make that trade, what's your quarterback answer next year if it fails, if Justin Fields fails, if it doesn't work out? And there's just no way that the answer to that question brings you the same value that you currently hold with the access to Caleb Williams.
Right. And I think a lot of people felt like that trade, the Carolina Panthers were actually going to be what the Houston Texans were this year, right? Like that it was going to be Bryce Young elevating that roster, and like probably still a first-round pick, but it wasn't going to be top 10, top 5, number 1 overall. But Ryan Poles is shown to be pretty bold, right? Like his testicular fortitude, it's pretty high, right? But to pass on a guy like Caleb Williams, to already pass on a guy like C.J. Stroud the previous year that proved to elevate what Houston's doing, like he better know pretty damn well what he's doing. Like it's just like, as you said, all signs point back to Caleb as the safest play moving forward.
Yeah. And I don't know that I thought that a couple months ago, to be honest with you. I sort of felt like running things back with Justin was safer, because at that point, USC was kind of struggling, and there was these questions about Caleb Williams, and this is really before I started digging into this stuff more. And honestly, watching more of the tape, I've watched so many of his games now just in the last couple months, and you just can't help but watch him be like, this guy's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. And then you do the digging, and I had a big story come out this morning, on talking to some of the people who have coached him, who played with him. No one really has a bad thing to say about him. I think a lot of this stuff is smoke. And just like...
Do you know who that sounds like? Kyler Murray.
Yeah, exactly like Kyler.
Yeah.
Exactly like
really
Kyler.
Does. Like the red flags that popped up around Kyler, and like we cover him and we talk to people that are close to him or coached him. Like he's as competitive as he loves ball. Yeah. And then you see the things from Caleb, like Carl Williams saying he would want some sort of ownership stake. He's telling that to GQ, and I want to go home and watch Netflix with my dog and all that. It's like, does he love ball or does he care? He's crying in the stands. It's like, but still, when you turn on the tape, it's electric. And it's like, if people like Justin Fields, they're going to love Caleb Williams.
The other thing I would say about Caleb, too, is that he's extremely competitive. Like, again, I was at Pac-12 Media Day, interviewed him, and I'm watching him go against another it was Penix, and they were playing pickleball. And Caleb was losing, and he was like, fuck that. You know what I mean? He turned it on and tried to beat him. Like, he's uber competitive.
Wait, did he?
And I think sometimes people look at him like when he goes into the stands and he's crying because they lost that game, right? Like, some people look at that and they're like, oh, I can't believe he's doing that. That's kind of soft. I'm like, that dude wants to win so bad that he's emotional about it. I'm okay with that. And so I don't think that's something to really scoff off at.
Yeah, and a couple things to that, Nicholas Moriano was down at the Senior Bowl last week with you, Bo, and he talked to the USC running back, Marshawn Lloyd, right, is his name. Similar story, what you just brought up with pickleball. He was like, this guy doesn't want to lose anything. We had a dodgeball match, and Caleb was losing, and he was like flipping out over it. He does not want to lose at anything. And then to that point, in some of the digging I did for the story that came out this morning, the context of that game where he's crying post game matters, because he's very goal oriented and his family's very goal oriented. So he wanted it when he made the move to USC. The Heisman Trophy was a goal, got it. But the national championship was the other big goal. And at that point, that Washington game, they were basically, on life support to have any national championship hopes, but they weren't necessarily eliminated. And that game was the game where it was like, okay, this dream, all this stuff we've been working for years and years and years, it's over. It's not happening. And then he goes over and he hugs his mom. And he said later that week in an interview he did with the USC reporters that, like, you know, sometimes the touch of your mother just brings the emotions out of you.
Yeah.
And I think we can all as human beings relate to that at some point. So getting that type of context to that specific thing that people are trying to hold against him, I don't see it that way. That being said, if I'm an NFL GM, it's probably a question I'm asking.
Yeah.
You know, at some point along the road, they got to ask these very hard questions. So I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all, but I can't find here's the only thing that's come up that has been a legitimate criticism that I've heard, and that is when things aren't going great in the middle of games, he can kind of shut down on the sidelines and be kind of hard to he'll kind of put up a brick wall and be kind of hard to get through.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's a legit. But
isn't that part of the
thing.
maturation process? And we saw it play out firsthand with Kyler, right? And like he would do the same thing. And you're like, oh, his body language sucks on the sidelines. But we've seen that develop, and it's easier to develop that than it is to develop the skill set that he has right now at the quarterback position, because you're seeing that on the opposite side as far as the arm talent with Justin Fields and where he lacks as far as the ability to make the throws, where Caleb can make those. And like, sure, Justy's got great sideline demeanor, but he's going to go out there and win you a football game and make the throws necessary. Well, that's going to be harder to teach than maybe Caleb, maybe his body language being a little bit better.
Right, because you're talking about like not necessarily raw talent, but some of the more detailed mechanics that go into stuff that's harder. That's harder to teach. And we've seen with Justin Fields, a lot of the same concerns that we still have about Justin Fields today are the same exact concerns that they had coming out of Ohio State. Whereas, like, with this other stuff, dude, this is a 21-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Like, we forget that sometimes. These are and they're Caleb Williams is a 21-year-old with this enormous spotlight on him that just getting bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. So, is that the type of thing that changes, you know, as he matures in the NFL and becomes a professional? And that's always that applies to all draft picks, obviously. But in this case, like, okay, if his sideline demeanor needs to get a little bit better, that's something that will probably improve as he gets into the NFL.
Yeah, agreed. Listen, just keep your hands off of Marvin Harrison Jr.
No. Have you even turned on the tape?
For Marvin?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And look, we're in Big Ten country, so, you know, I've seen him turn on.
Our listeners just got at the edge of their seat. What's he going to say about Marvin?
Well, because I went to Wisconsin. I'm a Wisconsin Badger guy, and that was not a fun game to watch this year. This guy's just unbelievable. He's incredibly good. He'll be my top wide receiver this year, no question. Now, that being said, because, you know, the Bears do have the 9th pick, and they need a wide receiver too. So we've been talking about this as well, and there are a ton of Bears fans that, you know, are coming up with all kinds of dream scenarios where, you could trade back and still get Marvin, or there's the wild theories are you could draft Caleb and then move up to somehow get Marvin too.
With the Patriots?
That?
Yeah, maybe the Patriots don't love Jaden Daniels or May, who was ever there. I mean, they could be in the same spot the Cardinals were last year, where they need to get some assets, future draft capital. It's possible.
Yeah.
But
if that happened, like, Phoenix will riot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I would be
Caleb Williams in the stands. If I saw my mom, I would break down. I would just break down in tears.
Though, I love Roma Dunze, though. I really do. So, in terms of a consolation prize, and here's the problem with that with the Bears, I don't think he's going to last a 9.
No.
I don't think he lasts a 9 either.
I also think that there's an argument to be made that, yes, Marvin Harrison is the clear number 1, but Roma Dunze is not that far behind.
I agree with you.
1,000,000%.
I don't think the gap's that big.
I like Malik. I got Malik between those two, but it's a great class. I mean, the top 3. And then, like, the depth of this, and Nick and I saw this on full display, like, in the day 2, day 3, like, the depth at receiver is pretty impressive, but at the same time, that top tier.
It's special.
It is.
Top.
It really is.
It's special at the top, and, you know, I hope one of those guys falls to the Bears at number 9.
Do you think they could pick swap maybe with, like, an Atlanta or something, or Las Vegas with Justin Fields?
Possibly. I mean, the Texans kind of set the table for that last year and how they maneuvered around and ended up getting Will Anderson and Stroud at the same time because they had that draft capital. I really do think, though, that Ryan Poles, the Bears general manager, is one of these guys that understands the value of always keeping that draft capital intact a year ahead. So that might be part of his motivation for moving back from 1. And then he realizes Caleb Williams is too good to pass on.
Right.
So the idea of him moving up from 9, I personally find hard to believe. I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I just don't think that. I think he'd be more inclined, if he sticks with Caleb at 1, to end up moving back later, with that 9th pick. Especially if those other wide receivers are all gone. I could see the Bears jumping back.
There's no way they let Jalen Johnson out of their grasp, right?
No chance.
Yeah. Okay.
No chance. They're
just bury that, Cardinals fans. Just like Bears trying to figure out ways to get up for Marv. Just realize that Jalen Johnson, that dream's not happening.
He'll get tagged. I think that's headed to a classic franchise tag. Maybe a small chance that they work out a deal, but yeah, I don't see any scenario in which. And they honestly, both sides have basically said that. Publicly.
Good.
But Ryan Poles, at the end of the season, he's like, no, we're not letting him out of the building. It's not
That's
happening.
the smart thing to say.
Yeah.
So
a lot of smart things being said by the CHGO Bears this week. Matthew Berry was on with you. Albert Breer. Great interviews. Highly encourage you to check out CHGO on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast, CHGO Bears. Adam, thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. I'll do what I can to get Marvin to Arizona. But again, I don't have any control over this.
He's already liking tweets and stuff like that. So we got our guy Zach Berman from PHLY. He's going to tell us how much the Eagles are missing JG and Jonathan Gannon. I got to tell you about our friends over at Circle K, though. The Inner Circle, Saul, Mac, Damon, myself, Johnny's going to be hitting the road here pretty shortly. You got to stop by Circle K. I mean, that's when you got empty coming up or if you're just topping it off. Circle K is where you're going to go and you're going to fill up. I did it across the street from another competitor, and it was like 30, 40 cents cheaper. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Circle K has the top gas prices. No doubt about it. It's America's thirst shop as well. Polar Pops. You got all the snacks you want. You loaded up on snacks.
I did.
So did Damon Dog. You got pork rinds?
I got pork rinds.
Yeah, you got the Circle K pork rinds. It stunk up my truck a little bit.
It did.
I'm sure it was legit.
It did smell like a fart in there. I apologize to everybody before I opened the bag. Did I not?
But you were cashing in on your 6th free because you got that. You're part of the Inner Circle, Saul. It's a free membership program. Join the Inner Circle today. Download that Circle K app. Terms and conditions apply. It's at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for more details.
I didn't have to drive yesterday, which was so fantastic. Every time I've come to Vegas, I've had to drive.
Right.
Bo took the reins this time around, so I was able to partake in some fun edibles before we came over. And so OG's is the one where you can go to get your best edibles in the Valley. Go to ogsbrands.com. Follow them on social as well, on Twitter and on Instagram. Remember, they got the RSOs, they got the Happy Balance gummies, they got the sativas, the indicas, everything you could possibly think of. OG's Brands has got it for you, so go check them out at ogsbrands.com. And remember, you must be 21 and over to enjoy.
I hate that you threw it in my face. I mean, it was like 5 hours I'm never going to get back. I feel like a part of me is still on those desert roads out there.
I blinked that we were here in Vegas, so it was all good to me.
Damon Dog was passed out in the back.
Mouth breathing.
Just slumped, dude.
How was I? Like, would you give me 5 stars, Mac, Damon,
in
Saul?
terms of driving?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy with the performance, Bo.
Mac,
he was going about 95 down a hill, and there was like cliffs on the side. I was like, maybe we can slow down just a little bit.
That's a truck guy.
But other than that,
that's just a truck guy.
Yeah,
you're legally not allowed to have a Dodge Ram unless you drive like that near the cliffs.
Ram trucks, man.
How many Ram trucks do they have in Philly?
Quite a few, actually. But yeah. Especially the offensive linemen.
All right. I love that offensive line. It's one of the most likable groups, I think, in the NFL. Sure. Zach Berman, PHLY Eagles, joins us here out live at Radio Row. And, I mean, we'll see if we've seen the last days of Jason Kelce. But, I mean, the Christmas album they always drop, it's a fun crew.
Absolutely. And it's kind of how they built their team. And it's rare to have your offensive line as like the faces of the franchise. Yeah. But in Philly, between Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, for instance, Jordan Mailata, Lane Kelce went to the White House this year for a Christmas party to sing. You don't see that with a lot of offensive lines. So at this time last year, I was in Phoenix for the Super Bowl, and those linemen were as popular as anyone else during like the whole media night. So that goes to show you it's a little different in Philly in terms of the O-line.
I wasn't seeing Jason Kelce there at the Chiefs-Bills game, shirtless, just slamming beers and kind of throw it in the face of Bills fans there, the Bills Mafia.
That's not surprising. I've known Jason. I've covered 13 years of his career, 12 of his 13 years, and that's his personality, right? He fits right in tailgating as much as he does playing offensive line.
Isn't it crazy that it's coming to an end that you covered pretty much from wire to wire for a guy like that?
It's crazy. I'm not sold that it's the end until he actually says it. I know that's where he's leaning.
Yeah.
But Jason always said that he's going to know when to retire when he doesn't want to go anymore. And Jeff Stoutland told him that. The offensive line coach told him that. And Jason would say, well, I'm always going to want to go. And Jeff Stoutland said, no, there's going to come a time when you're just going to be like, oh, man, I got to go play. Yeah. And so we'll see if that happens. I think he's leaning that way, but I also think he loves the locker room. He loves the cafeteria. I don't think he wants to give that up.
Don't you think he probably it would benefit him if they made the tush push illegal? He'd be like, damn, this is gonna save my career here. Maybe lots of bumps and bruises.
Yeah, I mean he's told stories about the bottom of that pile. And it doesn't sound fun. Better him than me, right? So
every time I see that, I always wonder, like, dude, that can't be as easy as it looks, especially for those guys.
No, so it's easier for Jalen Hurts than it is for Jason Kelce, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens. Like they're on the bottom of that pile. Those guys are doing all kinds of things to them. Yeah. And the whole strength of the play is Jason Kelce getting low.
Yeah.
Like getting underneath you. And Gannon, he knew that was coming when the Eagles played them. Like that's their kind of trademark play. And it's much easier to discuss than it is to actually execute.
Yeah, the Cardinals stole it, and they would have Clayton Tune, the rookie quarterback, going and run instead of Kyler.
It didn't look the same. It didn't look the same.
No, true. But I mean, Yellow Froholt, who played the role of Jason Kelce, did it pretty well. You talk about a year ago today. You're covering this Eagles team. That it seemed like that window just went wide open as far as Super Bowl window. But things can obviously in the NFL, in the cap league. The shelf life of these players at premium positions isn't as long as people think it is. I mean, where are the Eagles right now? I mean, after a first-round loss, Super Wild Card weekend, they lose to the Bucs. What's the state of the organization?
Well, transition right now because they're replacing both coordinators. And they did it last year on the coordinators' accord, right? Both got head coaching jobs. And now they're in a situation where they fired both. Because they were 10-1. There was a point there in the middle of the year where I thought we'd all be here talking about the Eagles, right? Like they were near the top of the NFL. They beat the Chiefs. They beat the Bills. They beat the Dolphins. They beat the Cowboys, and then the bottom just fell out underneath them. There was a handful of things. The defense was a major problem. Personnel-wise, I think they missed Gannon coaching. They really missed the players that they had on that defense, but really, it comes to, you talk about where the franchise is. If Jalen Hurts plays like he did 2 years ago, they're in contention for this game every year, right? If you have an MVP caliber quarterback, it's similar, by the way, to Kyler.
Yeah.
A few years ago when they were 10-1 with Kingsbury, right? And then if the quarterback gets hurt or the quarterback underperforms, it changes everything. So I think they have a lot of young talent, especially. They have perhaps the best wide receiver combo in the league, depending on what happens in Cincinnati here with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They have strength on the lines of scrimmage, but they need to figure out the back end of their defense, and Jalen needs to play at an MVP level for them to be the team that they can be.
When you covering the Eagles, obviously, and as that downward spiral started to take place, everybody, there was a lot of people that pointed to JG not being there and the gap there. What was it like when the Cardinals came into Philadelphia and won that game? What was it like behind the scenes going to cover that team?
Yeah, that was an interesting week because, I remember talking to Bo and Johnny about it, and like that was Gannon's Super Bowl. That's I think internally in the organization they kind of felt like this one means something to Gannon. Even though Gannon kept saying,
downplayed
it. The way he exited, the way kind of I think the city felt about him, all that went down with the tampering, I think it was personal to Jonathan, and he showed it. Now that loss signaled that there was a major problem, and I say that because when you lose to San Francisco, when you lose to Dallas, even when you lose to Seattle, it's like, all right, this is a tough schedule. These are tough games on the road. But when you lose to Arizona at home, when you have a chance to kind of be in the driver's seat in the NFC East, a chance to get that 1 seed at that point, that was problematic. So I think that was an indication that this wasn't just an aberration, that there was problems with the team.
Yeah, let's get into that tampering conversation. I want to get from the
Sure.
Philly perspective. Like, we got Florio's perspective, who some people call like a conspiracy theorist, right? And he goes in and he doesn't, beat around the bush. He thinks that it compromised how JG prepared for this game. Like ESPN had like a report that Vic Fangio and others were saying it ruined lives, and I don't know if there's hyperbole there, but like what from your perspective, what was it true? What went down from what you could report?
Yeah, I don't think it affected the Super Bowl. It affected after the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is I do think Vic Fangio would have been the defensive coordinator last year had they known that Gannon was going to get a head coaching job. So basically what I can say is that Gannon is interviewing for the Texans job. He doesn't get it, right? So he thought he was coming back to Philly. And the organization thought he was coming back to Philly.
After the conference championship
Exactly,
game.
yeah. And so then at that point, Vic Fangio, he's going to Miami because he was in place for the Eagles to replace Gannon. The Eagles, all along, they would say they were renting Gannon. They figured that Gannon was getting a head coaching job. He came close, frankly, after his first year to getting the Houston job. So when that happens, all right, internally, the Eagles are like, Gannon's coming back. Vic takes that Miami job. Had the Eagles known during the early run to the Super Bowl week that Gannon was a candidate elsewhere, they probably would have held on to Vic, or Vic would have held off. And I say that because, and this is why I don't think the Super Bowl preparation was compromised in that Shane Steichen interviewed for the Colts job at that same period of time. Right? It didn't, and no one
it was just
said,
within the rules,
exactly.
right? It was his second interview. The Cardinals hadn't had their initial interview with Gannon because he talked to Houston, as you said, and then D'Amico Ryans, they had VIP access to the top coordinator candidate, and that just kind of became, he took that job. So it's really fascinating, like how things broke down, and that Steichen is perceived as this like did it right, and then JG's ruining lives and just leaving a wake of just destruction in his.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I would actually say I don't think this is hyperbole. Steichen probably spent more time interviewing that week than Gannon did. The only difference is because Steichen's was above board, to use that term, if you will. The Eagles kind of had their succession plan ready when Steichen got that Colts job. They were caught off guard by Gannon getting the Cardinals job, and that's why they had to do a search after the Super Bowl, and they didn't get the guy that they kind of had hoped for all along. Now the irony is they have Vic Fangio now. But I think that's where the bad blood from the tampering comes down, is that had they known Gannon was going to get that Cardinals job, they would have kept Vic, or Vic Fangio would have wanted to stay in Philly.
Is there any fallout with Rawlis following him?
Yes. That's a good question. I think if Nick Sirianni had his preference, it would be like, all right, you get this job, but don't poach our staff. Now, the irony there is that Nick brought Gannon with him from Indianapolis. So it's almost like do as you say, not as you do. You know? But I think that all along I had kind of known that Nick Rawlis was going to follow Gannon. He was Gannon's guy. He was Gannon's hire. He was Gannon's guy in that building. Now, Nick was very well regarded. And I do think that if they promoted internally, it would have been Nick Rawlis. But I think Nick was going with Gannon no matter what.
Let me ask you this, unless you got something, Saul.
No, go ahead.
I mean, when you look at this Philly roster, and it looks like there's going to be, a significant turnover, some key free agents. Do you see anybody as a Rawlis or JG guy that could potentially follow him, like a Kazir White did last offseason?
That's interesting. Now, the Eagles' personnel wasn't particularly good this year. But I would say that if Fletcher Cox were to play somewhere else next year, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I think if he comes back and be in Philly, I think the closest he came to leaving was last year. But then I could see that, and kind of the interesting thing is I don't think Fletcher and Jonathan saw eye to eye at the beginning.
I heard that too.
But then later on, I think they did. But no, I think last year a guy like Javon Hargrave, who's playing in the Super Bowl for the 49ers, he would have made sense. Probably not at the stage that the Cardinals were in rebuilding-wise. But no, I think personnel-wise for the Eagles, a lot of like the Gannon guys aren't necessarily there anymore.
Right.
Marcus Epps was a guy he
He's
really
here.
liked. Yeah. And so yeah, I wouldn't look out for that unless, like, for instance, if James Bradbury were to get cut and Bradbury's coming off a bad year, the Eagles would have to eat a lot of money if they did that. But if Gannon's like, all right, I've seen this guy play at a high level. Gannon always talks about football character. James Bradbury has that. Then maybe as kind of like a low price reclamation project. But I think last year's roster was probably more conducive to bringing in Gannon imports.
One of the things that when you guys struggled that last section of the year, and you can't really put a finger on what is going on with this team. Sometimes that leads to things are happening behind the scenes that maybe we don't know about, right? Yeah. How vital do you think Gannon might have been in kind of just keeping that together a little bit, at least on the defensive side? Because we saw the Cardinals did not have that much talent on that roster, but they played their asses off just about every single game of the 17-game skid. So I don't know.
Well, I'm unpopular in Philadelphia for saying this part. That I think Gannon's a really good coach, and I think they did miss him.
Yeah.
Now, I think they missed
him. You tell Bo Wolf that every day?
Yeah. Bo and I get in that debate all the time. Now, I think they missed the personnel more than they missed Gannon, right? I mean, Gannon had great players, but I think the continuity that they had year one to year two, Gannon really had a vision for that defense, and they were able to execute on that vision. And I think last year, one of the things that was missing was I don't think the communication between the way Sean Desai wanted the defense to look and the way the personnel kind of executed it was aligned. And I think they had that with Gannon. So if I had to say, they missed like C.J. Gardner-Johnson and T.J. Edwards and Kaiser White and Marcus Epps and Javon Hargrave. They missed those guys more than they missed Gannon. But I do think that they missed Gannon. I think if Gannon came back, some of the issues you might have seen communication-wise they would not have been there. And the other thing, too, is I think Gannon really had a connection with Howie Roseman in terms of like what that roster was going to look like, the composition. Yeah. And I'm not sure that was there this past year.
So I guess that fire in the gut was kind of doused, huh?
Yeah.
I think there's a better chance T.O. comes back than Jonathan Gannon at this point.
Yeah. Jonathan Gannon's not very popular in Philly. I can tell you that.
Yeah. It was when you have a divorce, I think both parties are happy with where they are now. Sure. I mean, even though Philly finally gets their guy in Fangio, and then they bring in Kellen Moore. It's really going to be fascinating to see if they can get back on track next year. Zach Berman, PHLY, man, thank you so much for joining us here on Radio Row.
Absolutely, this was fun. I enjoyed it.
Let's catch up again.
It's great being part of the All-City family.
Absolutely.
Go, baby.
All right, man. Are you up, by the way? You hit the tables yet?
I haven't hit. We got in late last night, but I'll be playing blackjack some.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know how we go. Let's go, baby.
Zach Berman exits. Great insight there as far as the Jonathan Gannon Philly era and where it stands now. Talking about betting, making some checking out the odds for the big game. Of course, BetMGM has your bet 5 get $158 instantly. Check it out right now. Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android. Visit BetMGM.com for more details. Sign up, deposit at least $5 into your newly created account. Place the wager in the amount of $5 at standard odds price. Once you have placed that bet, you're going to get $158 in bonus bets. Regardless of the outcome of your wager, you're getting $153 for free. That's it. And BetMGM's doing it for you. Sign up with BetMGM. Use that bonus code PHNX. Place your first wager with the BetMGM Sportsbook through the BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app. For at least $5, receive $158 instantly in additional winnings, regardless of your wager's outcome. Check out the show notes for full details. And now check out our guy Damon talk about it in the disclaimer.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms. This promotional offer is not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico.
Oh, yeah. I was sitting there waiting for Bo. You know what I mean? I'm sitting there thinking about BetMGM and how much money I'm going to put on the Suns to beat the Bucks tomorrow.
We see the spread for that game?
I have not.
All right.
I don't care because the Suns are on a roll, and they're gonna dominate Giannis and those lazy Bucks.
He's sitting there counting his winnings on our drive up. Bradley Beal, what was his point total? Like 24.5?
I needed 25, and he got me 43. I'm not mad at that. And I dominate in our BetMGM Suns betting thing of the year. So it's fantastic. But I'm going to watch the game too. And the one place that you can go to watch the game is obviously in Arizona Family Sports. You got to check them out. They've got every single game, every Suns game this season. You got to check them out. They're fantastic. You can go to ArizonaFamilySports.com to check out all the possible locations for your channels, depending on where you live at in the great state of Arizona, by going to ArizonaFamilySports.com and /Phoenix, /Suns to find your closest channel.
Absolutely. Check it out. And check out our guest here, Andrew Sendejo.
What's up?
11, 12 years in the
12.
league?
12.
Unbelievable career in the NFL, playing safety. Saw the hat. You got the Braintree hat on right now, but the Make Football Violent hat, it goes super hard. I love this hat. Look at that thing.
Wow.
If I would pay you money out of my wallet for that.
You know, I would give this to you, but it's reserved for Pat McAfee. He requested one. But we do have these, the guy who's making these, they do have them for sale.
All right,
online,
I will buy it.
so.
Like I said, here, let me show the audience here. It's unbelievable. I'm actually going to steal this right now. No, Pat McAfee, who's going to be yards from us. He's a little bit bigger time than us here at PHNX. But Andrew Sendejo here on behalf of Braintree. What are you guys doing over there at Braintree?
Man, so we have a line of brain health products that help with focus, memory, neuroprotection, stress and anxiety, sleep, hydration. Really just wanted to make a line of products that are backed by clinical human studies proven to be effective. You know, being in the league, obviously, a lot of head trauma, prolonged head trauma on myself, my peers, and just really set out to kind of help with all that. You know, weren't a lot of products around when I was playing, and so really our whole mantra is just brain health and just overall health, having people feel better, longevity. You know.
Yeah.
So
How much education have you provided for current or former players, and what's been the feedback so far on this?
Yeah, so we have guys that will reach out to us after they get a concussion or whatnot. We'll send products to guys free of charge. We're not, you know, trying to make any money off those guys. We made it to help. Really, it was our whole deal. And at first, we were taking all these different ingredients separately, and then that's when we, you know, consulted with our neurologists on staff to validate all the studies and how they all work together synergistically to help with all these areas. And so, yeah, there is a lot of education to it to kind of understand, but we like to just make it simple for the guys. We're like, hey, like you should take this every day to help with even just remembering plays, like memory recall. Like there's a ton of mental, there's a huge mental aspect to the game, you know, probably if not more than the physical aspect. You know, and every week you memorize all these plays, you know, all these different adjustments. And then at the end of the week, you have to wipe it all clean and relearn kind of a whole new script, so to speak. And so there's a huge part of, you know, a huge mental part of the game. And so that's kind of where we come in.
Did you ever connect with the first year covering Jonathan Gannon was great. I mean, you talked to us at this time last year, and you kind of gave us some insight before he got the gig with the Cardinals and how where he was going to have a strength in connecting the players. And, man, did we see that. We saw the buy-in. Have you connected with him, at least any of his players on Braintree?
Yeah, a little bit. So we're working with the nutritionist. We're hoping to kind of get that just throughout the building, you know, for this next season coming up. We kind of, some of our products that we were launching specifically for some of the athletes and for just the facility in general, kind of just missed the cutoff on the timeline. So just staying close with them and, you know, trying to help out, especially when, you know, it comes to training camp and, you know, how freaking hot it gets out there. So, but yeah.
Any other sports that have maybe come to you guys, and outside of, you know, obviously football, you think about the violent sports, you know, like
so we actually, I don't know a ton of hockey players, weirdly, even after being in Minnesota, but we have a UFC fighter, obviously a lot of head trauma, and weirdly soccer players, like when they have to head a ball, do get some kind of minor head trauma there. But even outside of just the head trauma, just the overall, you know, we like to say that brain health is mental health. Whenever you can't focus or you can't remember or you're stressed or you can't sleep well, those are the things that affect your mental health. So just in general, you know, I give this stuff to my mom, my dad, really for anyone who's looking to kind of improve all these different areas and just, you know, enhance and preserve their cognitive function.
You know, I think about how you used to play the game, and even your hat, you know, make football violent again. It's one of the things when we talk to JG in his introductory press conference, how he breaks down what he wants from his players. He wants them adaptable. He wants them violent, right?
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
And it seemed like you kind of fit the mold of all that.
Yes, that was probably why we got along so well.
Yeah.
Because he was like, "You're exactly what I like as a safety." But yeah, those
It was
are all
stepbrothers. Did we just become best friends?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, you know. And he was a huge, you know, nutrition supplement guy. So we got along in lots of different areas. And I think a lot of it too is just as a coach, if you see things the same way, and your coach isn't having to convince you to do something that doesn't make any sense, or when you give him input on you know, there's like an adjustment, you say like, that's just not going to work. That like they're going to score a touchdown if we do it that way. And some coaches are very stubborn and they say, no, we're doing it this way. And some will take your input and try to, you know, whether it's, they take that to the defensive staff meetings and say, hey, like, you know, this is going to put my guys in a bad situation. Yeah. And that's how it always is. Every position coach is fighting for their position to get like the easier job, just so that like their guys look good. And then just, there's no way you can do that all the time. So.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I really love about learning about people is that you don't know what makes them up. And what's one thing about Jonathan Gannon that you feel like people either there's a misconception about or something that they don't know about that makes him who he is?
Well, I guess it would be interesting to know kind of what their outlook is. But I think just from knowing him, he's just, you know, had a, you know, humble upbringing, you know, Cleveland guy, like blue collar guy. And that's just, you know, he worked his way up, you know, especially as a defensive coach. Like that's, you know, that's tough to do nowadays. We're all looking for offensive coaches most of the time. And so you just got to appreciate the fact that nothing was really handed to him, that he had to like grind it out to get to where he's at. And so a guy like that, you know, that they are every week are giving it all they can to prepare their players in order to have a chance to win.
How's that balance? You know, because coaches, you know, sometimes you got to be a hard ass. Sometimes you got to be a little tender, if you will.
Yeah.
How's he managed that? And what did you feel about? Did he have a pretty good pulse on where you were at as an individual, not only, you know, physically and how you're playing, but also mentally?
I feel like we were kind of just on like a different level. It was almost like it was like your friend saying it, so you could just be very open and you know, we could talk very candidly to each other. Yeah. And yeah, that is the balance that you have to find as a coach, to where you have to be on their ass, but you also have to, you know, you have to have that balance of almost like making it enjoyable to go to work at the same time. Like, you know, you can't have 100% enjoyment, you can't have 100% just on your ass all the time. There's that balance. And a lot of that usually comes with winning, you know, like it's easy to be happy in the building when you're winning. When you're not, it's tough, but it's such a long season, such a grind. It definitely takes like a mental toll on you. It
was strange. I mean, the Cardinals only won 4 games this year, but you could definitely feel that there was buy-in throughout the season, and those guys were playing hard, and it was because of what the culture that Jonathan Gannon had kind of put in place in his short time there. But you know, you're a fun guy. I follow you on Instagram. Some wild posts out there. You know, you have some fun.
Yeah.
Did you keep up with Jonathan Gannon? And did you see like the perception? Like he went in there with enthusiasm, and like people posted it like he's doing like the pew 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 like shots and explosives, and he's got the fire in the gut. Did you ride the bus or whatever? And like I took it as like, I think he's just enthusiastic about his job. What did you think of the stuff that maybe some people were poking fun of, where he was just out there being himself?
I feel like I didn't get the context of what he was actually talking about. So I didn't I don't know. I've been around the guy so much. I'm sure, you know, there's sometimes you have to like get to know your coach's personality too, of what type of coach they are. If they're, you know, sarcastic or very serious, or like how they try to get their message across. Is it through like really interesting analogies, or, you know, how they do it? Everyone has a different coaching style. And so that's also part of it. It's just like learning about your coach to the point where you guys are so, you know, in sync, to where you can tell when your coach walks in just by their demeanor, you're like, oh shit, we're in trouble, or like, okay, he's in a good mood. And that's a thing that just takes time. But I know Gannon, you know, I know
he fires in the door. Like, is there anybody that you've seen with that type of energy in your 12 years in the NFL?
Gosh, I have to go through all the damn coaches now, but
Let that brain tree really work.
It's I mean, I think he just had a good balance, and I think I just love the way that he was just kind of like a no panic kind of guy. He'd come in the locker room before the game. He's not like trying to give you all these last second tips, like freaking out. He's just like, hey, like, good luck today. And that was
put in the work.
Yeah,
now it's time to execute.
He was always, his big deal was, the game day is the players' day. Don't mess with the players. Obviously there's an absolute last second adjustment that you saw or something, whatever you mentioned it, but there's some coaches that they get a little panicky on game day and they start trying to like run through the reminders. You're like, Coach, I've been studying this shit all week. I got it. All right.
Yeah. No, I love that. That perspective, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like that demeanor in the locker room. And some guys respond differently to other people, but Jonathan Gannon seems like he responded or got people to respond to him with the majority. Because we've been watching Cardinals, in the Kliff Kingsbury era. I would even argue and say that even in their playoff year, they didn't have from 1 to 53 the amount of guys that played as hard as they did than this past season with Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, I think watching the how the players play, like you said, they play hard. I feel like that is one of the best indicators of that they respect their coach because they're playing hard because for their coach, for their teammates. Versus some places you go, some guys are just not like that. You can turn on the tape. There's guys kind of loafing around or not really hustling to the ball. And I think that also shows that guys they understand the scheme. They're able to play fast. It takes time. There are obviously some teams that like first year the coach does well, playoffs, all that. But, I mean, you can see with the Lions, some of these things take time to find the right pieces too. You don't have all the guys that after a year you're like, okay, we need to like these couple areas we need to address these in the draft and the offseason and whatnot, free agency, and that's just how it goes. But so looking forward to this upcoming season.
Let me ask you this: you were telling us last time that you were giving JG shit about he didn't have any tent on his G-Wagon's windows when the infamous video of we're gonna fucking gut these guys dropped.
Yeah.
You were texting him and giving him shit, but like throughout this time. As you guys are close, have you noticed any difference since he went from DC to head coach? I'd imagine.
Yeah, I can't fucking get a hold of the guy. Like me and Harrison Smith, we're his two safeties, whatever. So we were all in a group chat. We text all the time, and I text Harrison. I said, "Man, I think we lost him." Like, because I'm like, once you go to head coach, there's so much stuff you got to deal with. You got to deal with the media. You got to deal with fines. You got to deal with this and that. And I was like, yeah, he's not going to respond as often, but we would still, on game day, throw some text out or whatnot, and here and there, we just like check in. So, try not to bug him too much. Obviously, like when he gets back to his phone finally at the end of the day, you don't want him to feel obligated to like, shit, I got to respond to these guys. So,
does he really have like an iPhone 4?
I don't
Maybe
know
that's why he's not responding.
No, I don't know what iPhone
is it green
has.
Bubbles or what?
No, it's blue. I don't know what he probably, when he got that pay bump, he probably upgraded. I'm sure the team probably was like, look, we're going to trade this out because we have to be able to get a hold of you, and if we can't get a hold of you, that's going to be an issue. So they probably swapped him up, got him a new iPhone.
That's funny.
Incredible insight from Andrew Sendejo. Braintree, where can people find more info?
Yeah, go to BraintreeNutrition.com. We have 35% off sale. You can sign up, check it out. Free shipping, money back guarantee. If you think it sucks, we'll refund it. It doesn't. But, so go check us out, BraintreeNutrition.com.
Awesome stuff. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, man.
Enjoy the rest of the time out here. Radio. Are you playing the tables tonight? You got a game?
No, I don't. I'm not a gambler. Every time I come to Vegas, you always spend so much damn money on everything else. I'm not going to also lose money gambling. So, I might do a little shopping or something. But I'm just kind of busy hitting the radio row. So,
all right,
no gambling for me.
Awesome, man.
All right, see you boys.
Yep, later. Awesome stuff from Andrew Sendejo, 12-year NFL safety, trying to get a hold of JG on a daily basis. Text him back, man. Let's go.
Yeah, come on, JG.
Let's go. Make football
Make
violent
the call.
again.
Make the call.
That hat. I got to get myself one. I got to figure out what's the web. I'll catch up with him after that. Here's some good insight from Brain Water and all this. So, anything else for today? We're going to wrap up the show.
We got some pretty cool stuff lined up for the rest of the week. We got a couple Cards players that we're hoping to get in the door by the end of the week. We have, I think we're going to have Frank Caliendo tomorrow and a couple other dudes. So, stay tuned. It's going to be a fun week.
We got I think James Conner,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Wilson, but things are fluid out here on Radio
Trey
Row.
McBride.
Oh,
well.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. If that happens before Johnny Venerable gets out here,
That
he
would be
might,
bad.
He would melt down.
No.
He'd be so mad.
I'm the Trey guy. I don't care what
He's
Johnny
the point
says.
guy on Trey.
From day one, I've always been Trey.
So he saw Trey McBride, Damon, in Mobile and started the Trey
Just
train back
dominating.
then.
I knew it right away. When I saw Trey, I was like, that's the best tight end on the field right now. And I knew he was going to be a stud. I had no idea that the Cardinals were going to
At
take him.
55?
Yeah. And
But
so when they got
Johnny's-
him, I was like, that's a steal.
Johnny's the original McBridesmaid. He coined that term.
No.
The
No.
term?
No.
Okay.
I don't even know if that's true.
Day one, right here.
Someone in the chat might have coined
I think
it.
somebody in the chat or somebody in my Twitter mentions that I brought up, and then Johnny, he, like everything, he adopted it and claimed it as his own.
Yeah.
He's the ultimate McBridesmaid bridesmaid, Johnny Venerable.
Johnny. Yeah, he's coming out on Thursday, so it'll be fun to have him back here in the saddle. But, dude, let me say, if you haven't been out here, we have – if you're coming out to Vegas, whether it's be for the Super Bowl or you just happen to be in town for the week, on Wednesday, you guys got to come out to Circa. We have this overhang party that's going on. It is absolutely free, and we're giving you 2 free drinks. You don't have to do shit. All you have to do is just show up and come drink with us, hang. We're going to have the all-city crew. We're going to have some players. We're going to have some other people in the football industry coming out and having a good time. So come check us out, Circa. It's on Wednesday evening at about 7 o'clock, so it'll be a fun time.
If anybody came out here maybe like a decade ago, old heads like Saul and myself, like you used to be able to sit at a table and get free drinks, or you sit at a sports book. That's no longer the case. So getting 2 free drinks here in this town anywhere is fantastic, and that party is going to be awesome. Can't wait for it. You said Wednesday night, right?
Wednesday
Circa
night, 7 o'clock, Circa.
Hotel and Casino. Don't miss out. Don't miss out on any of the action going on from Radio Row, from the All-City Network. You got DMVR buffs already going off. Check them out. Flip over there. Subscribe to PHNX Sports on YouTube. Don't miss anything. We've got any of the interviews, any of the extra content coming your way. CHGO, you heard from Adam Hoge. You heard from Zach Berman of PHLY. It's all great content, and it's all easy to find. Just subscribe to all those channels. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. We've got a full week ahead of you. Come back tomorrow. Once again, 1 p.m. AZ time.
Yes.
We're going to be live from Radio World with all these great interviews. Maybe Matthew Berry tomorrow, maybe a Frank Caliendo, and that's just the beginning of it. For Damon Doug, for Mac Perkins, for Saul Bookman, I'm Bo Brock. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on PHNX Cardinals.
We all silly like the mayor.